Okay, so this lesson we're thinking about analysing the structure of a passage. Now, the new GCSE AQA that we're doing has an 8-mark question on language and an 8-mark question on structure. So it kind of gives equal weighting to both. So even though we've talked about it kind of implicitly in lessons, we've never made it kind of explicit, totally different from language. So that's what we're going to do today. The question will say something like this. This text is from the closing of a chapter. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, how and why the writer changes his focus as the extract develops, and any other structural features that interest you. Obviously, this word focus is going to be really, really key because it's said twice. We need to think about, throughout the extract, how does the focus change? Now, a really, really easy way to do this is to think about the beginning, the end, and the contrast. There'll be something going on for the structure for them to have selected this extract. We're going to have a think about the extract that we've already done, this one at the end of chapter 2. In this, have a little think about what you could say. So the extract that we've looked at starts, a pal stretched from miles away from the island. All the boys except Piggy started to giggle. Presently they were shrieking with laughter. Obviously this is quite a positive start. You've got words like giggle, laughter. There are kind of undertones of negativity, but I think we can ignore those and just kind of focus on the fact that this, except for Piggy and the pal and the shrieking, it is quite positive overall. We can then contrast this to the next bit, so the focus changes in the next bit. Piggy lost his temper. So we can see here the focus is on Piggy and what Piggy's saying, and if we have a look at some of the things he does, all of this is Piggy's dialogue, it's him speaking. So this kind of part of it is very, very dialogue heavy. The bits that we look at in the middle, by now they were listening to the tirade. Obviously tirade means massive rant, and we can see that through the amount of dialogue. It's quite violent in the middle, the sudden motion of the boys, here the fire growled at him. So the tension, if we compare it to this, if we compare it to the previous bit, which was quite positive, this is a lot more negative, and we can see how Piggy's got a lot angrier. At the end, we've got him asking who took any note of them, who knows how many we've got, and then we see another perspective shift. So this one has been mainly focused on Piggy having his rant, and this kind of makes the reader feel a little bit better. There's someone who's stepped up, acting like an adult. We know that Piggy will make a good leader, and he's saying the things that will make him a good leader. Everything he says is really, really sensible, despite the irony of like a pack of kids. What he's saying makes sense. What will we do if the whole island burns up? You don't give him time to think. So the reader feels quite positive, really, at this point, thinking the boys might listen to Piggy. However, we get another perspective shift here. Ralph took a sudden step forward. We've then got kind of Ralph talking, Piggy arguing back, Ralph, Piggy, Jack, Piggy. So we've got more of an argument. So you've got a shift from Piggy lecturing, we've got more conflict between the boys. Obviously, this makes it a bit more dramatic. We can see this conflict, and the reader again feels kind of more negative now because we realise that they're not going to listen to Piggy and there's going to be this fight. This gets even worse when we look at the next part. So Piggy asks at the end of this, think about those little uns wondering, how do you know they aren't still there? And we have this massive shift here where Piggy stands up, points to the flames. A murmur rose, died away, something strange was happening to Piggy, and he realises that the boy with the mark on his face has gone down in the fire. Here the descriptions of the setting become a lot more violent. A tree explodes in the fire like a bomb. Tall swathes of creepers rose for a moment into view, agonised, and went down again. Obviously, the fact that we've got this massive fire going out of control foreshadows the end of the novel, the very, very end, where the fire overtakes the island. If we look at the dialogue as well, again, it's kind of Piggy talking. We've got the other boys joining in, but Piggy's speech has become a lot more breathless. He Obviously because of his asthma, because he's so scared, we've got all these hyphens. We've got the repetition of this question, where is he now? Where is he now? AQA also likes us to think about the very end as well. So if we flip over to the final paragraph, Ralph muttered the reply as if in shame. Perhaps he went back to the... Ralph can't admit it to himself, and nowhere in this extract does it explicitly say that the boy has been killed. It's just kind of left through these unspoken things with the boys. They won't speak about it, and that's how we know it's happened. So we're kind of understanding the plot as the boys are, or understanding what happens as they are. And this is what makes this structure so interesting. This last sentence as well. Beneath them, you've got the connotations of Hal. On the unfriendly side of the mountain, the drum roll continued. Think about the last word. This is a kind of cliffhanger. We know that this boy's died. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got this kind of auditory imagery of the drum roll, the fact that it continues, it's not going to end, it's going to keep going. And this is such a negative end to the chapter. And this is what makes it so interesting, because we get this kind of terrible sense that everything's gone wrong for them. If we think about a model answer then, for level 7, we have to show a detailed understanding of structural features, have to analyse the effect of writer's choice of structural features, have a wide range of relevant examples from the whole text, and use a range of sophisticated subject terminology accurately and consistently. And this is what this kind of second half of the video is going to focus on. So everything that I've said in here I've kind of talked about in the video. This is just how we'd write it up. My first paragraph then, the text about the boys' realisation of the severity of their situation leads the reader through this same experience. Consequently, Golding begins the extract in a light-hearted manner. In the opening paragraph, we see the boys giggle and shriek with laughter. This deteriorates as we read through and experience, as the boys do, the slow realisation of what has happened. So in this first paragraph, I've given an overview of kind of all of the text. I've focused on the opening paragraph, so I couldn't really find much to say about it. In other examples, there might be more to say about the first paragraph, and that the examiner can kind of get an idea of where I'm heading. Think about my quotations in this as well. I've got giggle, shriek. Remember, this isn't language analysis. We don't have to say much. So if you just kind of imagine that you're salt and peppering these quotations, just putting them in really short quotations, just to demonstrate your point, but not going too much into it. And this is what kind of gets us these good marks for a wide range of relevant examples from the whole text. So if we're just kind of spreading these through our response like pepper, then this is what kind of really helps. My second paragraph then, Golding does not allow this initial happy mood to last long before he introduces Piggy in his tirade. His dialogue begins as breathless and rambling, interspersed with only small descriptions and action. Despite this, the mood is still hopeful, as the reader anticipates that the boys will listen to this sensible lecture and realise that they are acting like a pack of kids. The fact that the boys are described as listening also makes the reader feel optimistic. Quickly though, by line 24, think about how specific I'm being, line 24. The mood shifts to a darker tone as we see the boys turning on Piggy rather than accepting responsibility for their actions. We see elements of schoolboy bullying as Jack violently cries, "You shut up," and Ralph snatches at the conch. This is also reflected in the structure of Piggy's dialogue. His speech gets more and more breathless as he is interrupted. However, there is an even more dramatic perspective shift on line 43, when Piggy realises the truth of his statement that some of the little uns could have still been in the fire. His desperate question about the birthmark boy, where is he now, is repeated 3 times in the final third of the extract. Through this repetition, Golding makes it clear that the boy has been killed. However, even at the closing of the extract, Ralph cannot fully admit the truth. Just as Golding does not explicitly confirm the death to the reader, stuttering an unfinished excuse, perhaps he went back to the... It is not just dialogue that Golding uses to present an increasing understanding of the severity of their situation. Golding interspaces the speech and action of this extract with descriptions of the setting, which grow increasingly more dark and violent as understanding dawns on the boys, and consequently us. A third of the way down, the fire growled as if in threatening warning, before later a tree exploded like a bomb, and creepers rose, agonised. This also foreshadows the end of the novel, where the fire destroys the whole island. The disturbing descriptions come to a climax in the unsettling final sentence, where the drum roll continued. The sinister auditory imagery emphasises the danger and malevolence that the boys have released onto the island. We are left on a cliffhanger, and the final word, continued, suggests that this grim atmosphere will continue throughout the novel. The chapter thus ends on the desolate realisation that mankind is inherently evil. We corrupt everything we touch. If we have a little think then about the things I've looked at, opening paragraph, how it changes, so how the mood shifts, perspective shifts, and finally the ending, I've got the final sentence, the final word. So one way in which you can attempt this question is just by going through it consecutively, thinking about the opening, how it changes, and then the ending. I've also mentioned here speech, action, dialogue, so thinking about these things, and we use the acronym SAD, speech, action, dialogue, in order to think about these. And remember, these are the ingredients that someone uses, that a writer uses to write. So if we're thinking about how the prevalence of dialogue or speech or action changes throughout the extract, then we're looking at structure. Obviously, one of the key things that we need to do is use a range of sophisticated subject terminology accurately and consistently. And if you're talking about these things, opening paragraph, mood shift, dialogue, final sentence, final word, these are all kind of hitting it. Dialogue, speech, action, some of the things we talked about before, how tone changes, climax, cliffhanger, these are all things that we've done when we've done our tension graphs. It's just kind of applying this 100% into a structure question. Hopefully that's helped a little bit.